Okay, so you are my first guest who has gone through pregnancy and birth not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 4 times.
I would say like the biggest change was from pre-pregnancy to postpartum for the first baby. And then I think after that, your body's pretty used to it. I mean, it gets more used to it and gets better at it. It's kind of like a skill that your body like develops over time. Because my fourth child, like that was the shortest birth and it went really smoothly and everything. But yeah, my body definitely changed the most with the first baby. And I don't feel like it changed that much with the other babies, really. Apart from like, after each baby having extra weight that I wanted to lose, and then I would work on losing it and then get back to like a pretty good like shape, and then I'd get pregnant again and thought, okay, so the weight loss thing, forget about that for a while and then go back to the pregnancy mode. Your clothes fit a certain way and you feel a certain way, and then you get pregnant for the first time. And then after that baby's born, none of your clothes fit anymore, even if you're the same exact weight that you were before, which I wasn't, but like your clothes, like your hips are wider, right? Yeah. And your tummy is different. And yeah, so we had the first one and we were like, oh, this is a lot more work than we bargained for. So let's just have one for now and we'll see if we want a second one. And I really wanted to have the second one because I thought, okay, I want my kids to have a sibling. That was one thing that I always wanted, and I never wanted an only child. And so I had the second one 2.5 years later after the first one was born.
Yeah.
And then I was like, great, I'm a girl mom now. I'm gonna have 2 girls and that's it, and we're done. Then I unexpectedly got pregnant with baby number 3.
Okay, so the third one was not planned.
The third one was not planned.
Okay.
No. And I had gone through like a diet and lost most of the baby weight from baby number 2. And I was in good shape, and so of course when your body's in good shape, it gets pregnant more easily, or at least that's my observation.
Yeah.
And so, so I unexpectedly got pregnant, and then I thought, okay, well, this takes away the question of like, maybe someday we'll have a third child, because now we are having this third child. So, but now we're done. So we're really done this time. And so after my son was born, that was also nice. Like, okay, now we have a boy, we've got both genders, we're good. After my son was born, then I thought, okay, I better get some birth control. So I went and got the spiral, the copper IUD. I had that inserted in February of 2020, so right before the pandemic hit. So that was lucky. I thought, okay, now we've got the pandemic, but I've got my copper IUD. I'm all good to go. And then in September, I had a pregnancy test because I had missed my period, and I thought, that's weird, but I have an IUD, and so that shouldn't happen. So that was a shock, and I thought, how is this happening? Like, how can I get pregnant with this thing in? So yeah, and then I went to the doctor and she confirmed, yeah, the pregnancy is there. We don't know where the copper IUD is. It must have fallen out.
It wasn't there.
It wasn't even in there anymore. So it must have somehow gotten dislodged. And now I've read that actually can happen quite easily to women who have had several children, because it's just not as tight up in there. And so like the cervix is everything's a little bit loosey-goosey, and it just, came unhooked and fell out. So so that was a huge shock, and that took me a long time to get over during the pregnancy. And I did consider the abortion route. I even went to the counseling that they do here in Germany and said, I'm going to, sit down with the counselor and talk it out. And then you have to wait 3 days after that, and then you can get the abortion.
Yeah.
But I didn't.
Is that yours or mine?
So we were like, we had 3 small children. The oldest at that point was, I think, 4, or was she 5? No, she was 5, I guess. Rosalie, I guess, was then 3, and Ezra was 1, I guess, at that point, something like that. Or he wasn't even 1 yet when I got pregnant, was he? Yeah, he wasn't. So yeah, he wasn't even 1 yet, and I got pregnant again. I just thought, oh my gosh, like, these kids are trying to kill me. Like, what is going on, And so I really thought, like, we had a big discussion about it, and we pretty much decided it would be best for our family if I went through with the abortion. But I just thought about it, and I just thought, I can't do it. I just can't. Like, I know, like, in my head that, like, abortion is a totally legitimate, like, medical procedure that is super important for women to have. And then I just thought, personally, I'm just going to regret it if I do this. In Germany, you have to wait 3 days between the counseling session and the procedure. Oh. So you have this 3-day like waiting period where you have to just sit and like think about it, basically. So that's just mandatory for anyone who wants to get an abortion. in Germany.
And then during that 3 days period, you changed your mind?
Well, I don't think I was ever set on an abortion at all.
But you just wanted to see how it would go.
I just knew, I knew logically that it would be the best for everyone, because we were already we were just so tired from the kids that we already had, and that it didn't make any sense. My husband he was in year 1 of an Ausbildung, and he thought, okay, if we have another baby, then how am I going to finish this schooling, He said, I don't want you to feel pressure from me, but I do not want this baby. But in the end, it's your decision because it's your body. And so I said, okay. And then I went to the counseling, and then I said, no, I'm not scheduling that appointment. I can't. I'll go in there. I might get in there, and then I know that I won't do it. I know that I'll just say, sorry, I gotta leave. I can't go through with this.
So for those who might be, interested to hear about that, because it's a very hard thing to even think and mentally prepare. And, there are countries where it's a nightmare even to consider. So in Germany, it is more or less, okay. Could you share that process? Like, how did you find out? Where did you go? What was the counseling like? How did you feel during that counseling, the whole process?
So there's several organizations in Germany and in Berlin that do these counseling sessions, and they're all, I think it's through the state, but they're nonprofits, and so they sign up to be able to give this counseling. And then you get a paper at the end with a stamp on it, of course, because it's Germany. And you get the stamped paper that's signed that said, yes, this person did the mandatory counseling. I think in German it's called Schwangerschaftskonfliktberatung, pregnancy conflict counseling. Okay. Yeah. So you have to go through that. The lady that I got to pick which organization. So I picked the one that was just closest to me here in Wedding. And the lady that did it, we spoke in German. She was really nice. She didn't try to persuade me one way or the other about anything. She just sat and listened to me and said, and reflected back what I was saying and what my feelings about it were. And she said, she could see both sides. And so she was really friendly. I kind of thought it would be one of these situations where they really try to convince you not to go through with it. But she wasn't like that. She was just really nice, really gentle. And so it was a positive experience.
What kind of information, did she provide any information?
She provided information about financial resources for people who might need financial resources. She provided information about which doctors I could go to for which kinds of procedures, because before, I think the cutoff is 12 weeks. You have to do it by week 12, but by week, I forget, 7 or 8, you can do the abortion with the pills. And then after that, you can only do the surgical abortion. So she recommended some doctors that could do one or the other. So she gave me a list of doctors and a list of financial resources, and said, you can always come back to us. We offer other programs for pregnant women and stuff like that. So she was very helpful.
Okay, that sounds very, encouraging, and, to know that there's something like that is available. And the information she gave seems to be super useful, to know, because not everyone knows that there are different options of going through that.
The first pregnancy, again, we weren't really trying to get pregnant, but we weren't preventing it. We were just kind of let's just see what happens. And I got pregnant very quickly, as it turns out.
How old were you?
I was 20, I was 30 by then.
Mm-hmm.
I was
the same. I was also my first.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I got pregnant when I was 30 and gave birth to her when I just turned 31. So I was 31 when she was born, which funnily enough was exactly the age my mom was. She also had 4 kids, also within the same exact time span, 5.5 years.
Wow.
So the age from me to my youngest sister is the exact same age from my oldest to my youngest. It's really weird. It's really strange. There's other parallels too. So she had 4 kids and I have 4. And then my husband, we had the same birth order as his family. So girl, girl, boy, girl. But then they had another girl, which were
interesting. And you were not even planning. It just, what a coincidence.
It just happened like that.
Yeah, wow.
It's really crazy. It's really crazy. And I've had I'm very lucky. I had no problems getting pregnant. I've had no miscarriages, no complications really to speak of. So yeah, so it's been a really good journey. And I realize now how lucky I am. Because when you grow up, you look at all these people that have kids and you're like, oh, you just get pregnant and then you have a kid and everything's fine.
Yeah.
But there's all these complications and people are having miscarriages all the time. People have infertility and have to go get treatments and stuff and pay a lot of money for IVF. And so, yeah, it's really crazy to me that like it just happened this way and everything so far, knock on wood, is fine, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
how did you find out you were pregnant?
How did I find out? I missed my period and then I took a pregnancy test, but it came back what I thought was negative. It didn't really have a second line. And so I thought, oh, and I told my husband, I'm like, thank goodness, like, I don't think I'm quite ready, you know? But I was pregnant by then. I just didn't know it yet. So a couple days go by, I still don't have my period. And then I thought, okay, I'll take another test. And I took it and it had the second line. And I was like, oh my goodness. So I didn't even have a gynecologist yet. So I had to like go out and, you know, find one. I looked online and found one. And I ended up with one I didn't like very much. So I didn't keep him for the other pregnancies. But anyway, yeah. So, and it was a shock. I was working as a tour guide. And so I was on my bike all the time, like cycling. I didn't have a contract. I just had like freelance work, you know. And so this like very like happy-go-lucky life that I was leading, I was like, oh, it's getting serious. We need to like find a new apartment. We were living in a studio here just around the corner. So like this tiny little studio, just the two of us. And I just moved in like, I don't know, a few months before. So it wasn't like we'd been living there very, very long. But then we had to look for like, a bigger place. So yeah, it was kind of scary. And I think a lot of what I did that summer was just kind of like, try not to think about it too hard. I was just like, I'm getting pregnant, I'm getting bigger, you know, but I'm just, you know, I'm gonna just enjoy these last couple months where I'm not a mom yet and just try to like relax and, you know, and not think too hard about any of it. I tried to prepare for the birth a little bit, but that's really all I did. I prepared for the birth. I had a doula. I looked for a midwife around like the 6-month mark, which is too late in Berlin, but I found one, which was lucky. Yeah, so I definitely like just kind of laid back and let it all just kind of happen, but I didn't really like worry too much about anything. I think the most prep was for the birth itself. I didn't prep at all for like breastfeeding, which now I look back and I thought, oh man, I really should have like looked into that better because it wasn't as easy or natural as I thought it would be. I had no idea what to do with my baby when she came out. I was like I had the nurses at the hospital. I was like, can you change her diaper? Can I watch you? Because I don't know what I'm doing, you know? But of course, like all of that falls into place pretty quickly.
Yeah. So I know like it was the same for me. I prepared for pregnancy, I prepared for birth and all that. And I did research, I read a lot. However, I had no idea what was coming after. Like breastfeeding, how to heal, all these things I missed, which are also super important. So when did you start having the first labor signs?
The first labor signs, let's see. The day that she was born, I was 39 weeks and 5 days or 4 days.
Almost there.
yeah, I was there. And I still wasn't like nervous. I was like, I probably will go over my due date because they always say that the first child usually goes over 40 weeks, usually. And so I was like, I at least have another week or so. But no, so that morning I woke up, I was already pretty swelling, like my feet were really like swelled, my ankles. My midwife had me on these like treatments where she like compression type treatments and like elevating my legs and stuff. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm developing preeclampsia, you know, like, so I was worried about that. They were monitoring my blood pressure and stuff. So I thought, oh my God, they're going to have to induce me if this keeps going like this, you know? So yeah, but then I didn't have to get induced. I went into labor naturally. I had slept pretty much all day because I didn't have anything to do. My husband was at work and I felt really guilty. I was like, oh, I'm sleeping all day. Like I woke up at 5 p.m. from the morning. Gosh, I wasted my whole day. But what I didn't know is that then I would have the baby in the night that night. So it was good in the end, actually, that I slept all day. So I got up, I called my husband, said, everything's fine. He'd like messaged me all day, like, what's happening? Where are you? And I'm like, it's fine. I'm okay, really. I was just sleeping. I got in the bath and then he came home and then we had, actually our doula came over that night and we had a chat. And during the doula thing, I was like, oh, I'm feeling like crampy, you know? And I told my doula about it and they said, oh, don't worry, like your body's just preparing for birth at some point, whenever that's gonna happen. And so I would have these sensations, that they were contractions, but I didn't really realize it. I just kind of felt like, oh, I feel like I'm on my period. And I had 4 of these sensations during the time the doula was there. So the doula left at like 9 p.m. I made my husband go buy me a doner kebab because I was craving a doner kebab. And then about 11, like the contractions just kept getting stronger and stronger. And then the baby was, my baby was born at like 4:22 in the morning.
Okay.
So it went pretty fast
That's
at that
very
point.
fast.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so you just had it like real stronger ones at 11, and then after 5 hours,
Yeah.
you just had like. So you go to hospital.
Yeah,
And
we went
then-
to the hospital at like 3 a.m.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we
You
went
waited
pretty late.
that-
Well, because it was my first time. I didn't know like how. I just thought I had every contraction. I thought this could last for like another 2 days. I'm gonna go to the hospital and like get the epidural, which I didn't want, you know. But I was like, I can't do this for 2 more days. But it was only like 2 more hours at that point, right? So yeah, I waited at home probably too long. I felt comfortable at home and I wanted to stay there. And the doula came back at like 1 a.m. I think. So they were with me as well. And they have a very calming presence. And I thought, okay, we're fine. And then they said, maybe it's time that we call the service that comes around and picks you up. They had like this, it's not an ambulance, but like similar. So we did. And then it was really hard for me to get dressed because the contractions were coming pretty quickly. I'd always wanted a home birth as well. I thought, you know, it would be better to do a home birth. But one, I wasn't like prepared. I didn't know what to do with the birth. I didn't have mental capacity to like actually prepare for a proper home birth. And my husband was also too nervous. He said, I'd really rather not have our first baby at home because what if something goes wrong, you know? And in hindsight, everything went so well that I really could have had a home birth and it would have been fine. But we didn't do that. Got there, we checked in, and then the midwife said, okay, I'm going to put you on the monitor and we'll do a fetal heartbeat monitor. And so she left me, and I felt like she had left the room for like 20 minutes, but she was only gone for like maybe a minute and a half because she left, and then she heard the noises I was making, and then she came back and she said, okay, I think you're a lot further along than most people that come in for the birth. So she took the thing off again, and then she took me to the birthing room, and I said, can I get a birthing pool? And she's like, oh, I don't think we have time for that. Yeah. So I was already in like the second phase of labor, like the pushing. So when I think she examined me, like the dilation at that point, and she said, oh yeah, like you're already like the baby's already descending. Now all you have to do is push. And so when I heard that, I was like, oh, I don't have 2 more days of labor. I just have like the next maybe 20, 30 minutes. This is great. And that's how it was. And then I just got on, like the bed was there, and then I got on the floor next to the bed and held onto the bed and then just did the pushing.
A standing position?
Kind of like a crouching, crouching position.
And you give birth like that?
Yeah.
How does it happen? How does it work?
I was holding onto the bed and I was just crouching like on the floor like this. And then every time I had a contraction, I would just, push in that position. And my husband was in front of me holding my hands, and the midwife was behind me, and she was really nice. She was super soothing.
Expecting the baby.
Yeah. And so she caught the baby when the baby came out, and then she just kind of like gently placed it on the floor. And then I was like, oh my gosh, the baby came through. And I just kind of like stopped for a second. Everything just kind of stopped. And I was just like, whoa, that was crazy, but it's over, right? Like, and then I turned around and like, you know, my daughter is like lying on the floor, and the midwife's like, would you like to pick her up? It's like, sure. I thought my motherly instinct would like, you know, kick in, and I'd like sweep the baby up. And
how was the breastfeeding the first time?
that was really hard. That was very hard. I was in the hospital. I had the room, I was sharing it with like 2 other women. We didn't get the family room. They didn't have any available. And yeah, I just didn't realize. I thought really that you just have the baby and the baby finds the nipple and you just kind of like put it on there and they start drinking. But she kept spitting my nipple out every time. And I don't know what it was, if it was like a latch problem or a position problem, or just she was learning, right? And I was learning. But the midwives weren't super helpful. Or no, at that point it was the nurses on the station, on the ward, and they weren't helpful very much at all. They would come in, they're like, yeah, your baby's screaming, you gotta feed it. And I'm like, I know, I'm not trying to starve her. I can't get her to latch and stay on. So they were like, well, you've got to, you know, do the thing where you kind of pinch your nipple and then like try to put it in the baby's mouth. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, how am I supposed to do that? What was really helpful though for me was I've got a cousin who lives in the US who is a lactation consultant, and so she sent me a lot of helpful tips. So that was one thing I think I would change about my first birth, is I would go back and say, look, home birth is going to be fine, just do it at home, because the next 3 were then all home births after that.
What?
Yeah.
The rest of home birth?
Yeah, I did home birth.
Okay, let's... Yeah. So wait, how long did it take for you to start nursing without pain?
I think it was probably a full 2 months.
Wow.
To the point where it didn't hurt anymore, or it didn't feel like little shards of glass were being poked into my nipples when I... it really did. It felt so bad. I realize now what happened is that she just didn't have a deep enough latch.
Yeah. And
I wasn't if she latched on, I was so happy that I let her go, even if it hurt. Whereas now, as an experienced breastfeeder, I would just undo the latch and get her to do deeper. But at that point, I was like, okay, she's on, it hurts, but I'll just let her do it. And so the latch wasn't deep enough, and so she was really gumming on my nipple instead of further back on my areola where she should have been.
So how did you decide to have home birth?
Like I said, I always thought it would be nice to do home birth, and I wanted it with my first, but I also had no idea what to expect, and I thought maybe it's better. I didn't want to make my husband all anxious either, so I thought, okay, we'll go to the hospital where they know what they're doing and they've been through it before and stuff. And yeah, like I said, the first birth went so smoothly that I thought, okay, if the next birth is like that, then it'll be fine. I can do it at home. So when I got pregnant with my second, and that's the only time in my 4 pregnancy history where I was trying to get pregnant. So the second one is the only one we actually tried to get pregnant. And that took the longest. It took maybe 3 months. So I had 2 periods where I was didn't get it this time, maybe next month, But yeah, by the 3rd month, then I was pregnant. When I got pregnant the second time, I knew immediately to get my midwife sorted first. That was the most important thing. So I went online and I found the praxis, the midwife practice. They do home births, so it's a collective of midwives, and some of them do home births. And I knew of this place because I'd done my prenatal birth preparation class there, yeah. And so I heard back then a few days later from this email that I sent from a lady named Vanessa. She was then my midwife for that pregnancy, and then she ended up being my home birth midwife for the next 3 pregnancies. She's fantastic. She's just really amazing. And yeah, so I had her set up by, I think, week 5 or whatever of pregnancy. And that was a huge relief to know okay, now I have a midwife. I don't have to search for a midwife anymore. And she's going to help me get this home birth underway. Yeah. So
what are the conditions? What conditions do you need to meet to be able to have home birth?
In Germany?
Yeah.
You have, there's certain health parameters. Yeah. I don't know if there's an age limit, but you have to at least make it to 37 weeks. I think before that you have to go to the hospital. And then if you go over 42 weeks, they won't let you go past 42 weeks. So if you get to 42 weeks and you're still pregnant, you can't have a home birth anymore. You have to go to the hospital. You have to have a certain iron level in your blood. And I always I struggled with that a lot. My iron levels were always really low. Yeah. Were you taking the
injections?
Oh, really? The injections. Oh, they had me on pills, and I took the Zaft, ferritin.
Yeah, it didn't help.
Yeah, right? I don't know. I don't know.
It's just maybe for normal people, but not pregnancy anemia.
Yeah. And my body was pregnant 4 times in 6 years. I never had a chance to recover my iron levels. So yeah, by the 4th child, my iron levels were super low. You have to, I think the 10 is the level. And if you go below 10, then you can't have a home birth anymore, because they're worried about you passing out or whatever. So yeah, there's a couple different parameters that you have to meet to do a home birth. Vanessa's she's such a pro. She's got a whole program basically that you have to follow. She likes to do all the prenatal appointments, but she's also happy to switch off with your gynecologist. For my second birth, I was with a gynecologist that she personally didn't like. And so that was kind of a tension, because she knew this gynecologist was anti-home birth. And I was like, well, screw her. I'm the mom. I can make the choice. This gynecologist has no say where I give birth. But she almost ruined that for me, because she wrote you? she said she did a scan when I was I think I went 8 days over with my second pregnancy. Yeah, it was 8 days over. And she, on day 4 or something, did a scan, and she said, your baby's measuring too big for a home birth. it's going to be, that's going to be too big, so you're not going to be able to do this at home. And so she wrote me like this prescription to go into the hospital and get checked to make sure like that her diagnosis was correct. And then I went home and I called Vanessa and I said, is this like, what do I do? And she's like, if the doctor has this suspicion that your baby's too big, and she like wrote it on a paper and like made it official, then that could get Vanessa in trouble for going through with the home birth. If something goes wrong and the baby is too big to get out and then like I die or whatever, then Vanessa is on like the line legally, right? Legally speaking. So she said, here, go to this doctor that I know is a good doctor, that is someone who's much more home birth friendly. Go to her and get a second opinion. So I think I did that. And then that doctor said, you're fine, you don't have anything to worry about. But yeah, so the first doctor had almost completely ruined my chances of giving birth.
Yeah, it's always important to get second opinion, even third, just in case, you know, even if you want pro or against home birth, doesn't matter. It's always important to get it.
Yeah.
Okay, so now your due date is approaching.
Yeah, it was May 2018, and yeah, I was getting close to my due date, and I went over my due date. And then, I don't know if you went over with your kids at all. No, every day after you go over your due date is like, okay, it could be today. And then like the sun sets and nothing happens. You're like, okay, I guess it's not today, but it could be tonight. Like you're on edge the whole time, and every day seems so long, and you're so pregnant. You're just like, I just want the baby out. But yeah, so I was preparing my birth space. We had a birth pool.